Started to design my skinny smelt last year, but decided to sit on it for a little while and tweak the shape a little bit before starting to actually do this build. Who am I kidding? I was just being lazy, actually, if I'm perfectly honest. I have a ton of these ideas just tucked away, just waiting for the perfect time to start actually doing something. But, sometimes it's nice to be lazy too. For some reason I was not able to find any clamps to keep the piece in one place while I was sawing it, and I was like, fuck it, I'll just hold it in my hand and risk losing all my fingers. And it worked out great. I still have all my fingers left, but definitely would not recommend anyone doing it like this, as it can be a little risque. Oh, and by the way, I'm still using that OBO Modelan stuff, in case someone is wondering what the hell this material is. Once I had got the rough shape, it was time again to take out my trusty rasp to get rid of the excess material that my incompetent sawing left behind on my soft bait master. After all that rasping and sanding, I drew the center line around the master to make it easier to taper it later as symmetrically as possible. You wouldn't want it to become crooked like a politician now, would you? I made this little template to help me trace out the taper I wanted on my softie. Really fiddly stuff, so I sticked it on with some tape. While I was making this bait, I thought to myself that I wasn't going to do all of the tail tapering by hand, so I brought out my favorite German thing besides bratwurst and took care of most of the shaping with my yellow dildo / vacuum cleaner combo. Sometimes it's hard to get everything symmetrical, so I figured that instead of risking of taking too much out with my multi-tool, I would just use my knife and then just use some good old elbow grease and sand the surfaces flat by hand. Also, I opted to taper the nose of my master with a knife, just because I normally just eyeball it anyways and see what looks good enough for me and then just go with that. Now that I had the tapered surfaces flat, I could start tracing out the head details and start carving those, but before that I needed to drill eye sockets. This will help me tremendously to align the two facing sides later on. I know I could have used my yellow German Multifunktionswerkzeuge to shape the master, but I didn't want to deal with the dust, so I did it the old school way with my carving knife. And this OBO model and stuff is easy to carve anyway, so it was not a big hassle. When I had sanded the master, it was time again to start doing some carving. But before that, I needed to draw some guidelines on the master with a little help from a stencil that I'm cutting now. Now that all of the pencil traces are drawn on, I can start cutting along the pencil lines. And you really have to have good control of the knife while you do this too, as there is a risk of the blade slipping and making you cry out like a little girl. Not that I would know. Really. Come on, stop looking at me like that. Okay, there was just one time. And besides, isn't it trendy nowadays to be in touch with your feminine side anyways? So, yeah, don't judge me. This next part is one of the most fun things that you can do while carving out details and seeing things come alive. Actually, I take that back. I could name at least 3 things right now from the top of my head that are more fun than doing this. And one of those things is being drunk while you do this. Oh man, that would be freaking hilarious. Ah, jeez. Wish I had beer. Usually when I start carving anything, I leave the fins last. I feel like it just makes more sense as they are a bit fiddly, especially when you start doing the fin rays. Here's something I've never shown before. I bought these jewelry files from a local hardware store ages ago, and they are super helpful in cleaning up the cuts after you're done with them. Go ahead and get some, you won't regret it. Next up I started to make the slots for the back and belly fins. Pretty straightforward really. You just drill a few shallow holes with the drill and just get rid of the rough internals with a knife. For this bait I decided to do the scales like on a juvenile smelt, so I separated the back scales from the belly with this ladder line that I'm drawing on now, with a help of a stencil which again is held on by some tape, so that the damn thing doesn't get misaligned. I started freehanding the grid pattern that I would use to then draw the actual scales. Which, by the way, apparently I forgot to film, but oh well, you're not really missing that much. Doing the scale carving is pretty much the same as doing the head details, just in a much smaller scale. It just takes a little longer to do, but that's fine. Sometimes you have to struggle a little bit to come out with something that's actually good. By the way, seeing my nose from this angle is kinda terrifying. I mean, Jesus Christ, dude. That's like Barbra Streisand or what's his face? The French guy. And Gerald Depardieu. Quality right there. Okay, now that I had everything carved, it was time to put the puzzle, that is the fins and the tail, together with the help of our friend 5-minute epoxy. After the glue had dried enough, I then started to mess around with some plastic putty, which, by the way, smells absolutely foul. And I bet you could get high from sniffing this shit, it's that bad. When the putty is still kind of fresh, it's relatively easy to carve it, so I shaped it roughly with a knife and then finished it off with a sandpaper. Now that my master was done, I started to play around with some gooey pink stuff, also known as Mold Max 30. I basically mixed 2 patches of mold silicone that both had 250 grams of silicone and additional few hundred grams of pieces from old molds that I chopped down to tiny little pieces to give me some more volume, baby. When the other side was fully cured, I started to peel off the molded clay and basically did the same exact thing that I did on the other side. Just remember to spray some mold release on the mold before pouring the silicone, or else you're gonna have a useless pink bar of silicone. Roughly 24 hours have passed and I get to finally see what my mold looks like. And by gently flexing and parting the 2 halves like a gynecologist, I now have a fresh new mold. obviously I'm going to need a pour hole, and the most logical place to cut it was on the tail. Like I mentioned in my soft bait making problems and solutions video, preheating the mold greatly reduces the amount of bubbles that you might get. So before pouring I blasted the mold with a heat gun, and then I was ready to pour some plastic. When I had some plastics ready, I started to paint them with cap coating soft bait airbrush paints, and basically decided to go with more natural colors for this first one, and basically painted a smelt, which goes perfectly for this bait, as I'm calling it the skinny smelt. So yeah, get comfy, get some popcorn, grab a beer, whatever, and watch me paint this thing. No lure is complete without eyes, so the last thing I needed to do is to slap some eyes on my soft baits and complete the look. And by the way, I'm using Loctite precision glue. As springtime is upon us, I headed down to the nearby river that was already free from ice, and took this baby for a test drive. Oh man, look at that bite action, so sweet. Almost makes me want to drool just by watching that thing wiggle from side to side. Anyways, hope you guys enjoyed this video. Be sure to like the video if you did, and if you want to see more, why not subscribe while you're at it. See you guys next time.